Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am Courtney Anderson. Today we have a show that is part of our Financial Fierceness series. And Financial Fierceness is exactly what it sounds like. We are talking about finance, um, and personal finance, and we are looking at this from an assertive perspective. We are being fierce. We are aggressive. We are not passive. We are making decisions and exerting control. We are fiercely discussing and analyzing different issues. So this is episode 156 of our show of Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I do encourage you to stop by courtneyanderson.com and come to our show page, episode 156, and you will find links and expanded show notes and our show sponsors for the show. And thank you. Thank you for being part of the community today and helping the show get to 156 episodes. I'm still stunned that it's moved so quickly and been so well received. So our episode topic today for episode 156, part of our Financial Fierceness series, is Suze Orman is right. You can't afford it, and neither can I. Suze Orman is right. You can't afford it, and neither can I. Neither can I. We cannot afford it. You and I cannot afford it. Suze Orman is a globally known a media expert in personal finance and has certainly had multiple appearances and books and has television shows. And there's a segment on her television show that I've seen. And in this segment, I believe it's called Can I Afford It? So she's talking about different things and sharing knowledge, and so people either call in or write in, and then they talk about something they want to buy. So it could be anything. It could be a car or a home, or it could be a purse or a bicycle or a watch or anything. And they talk about what it is and how much it costs, and then they talk about their own income. So they'll share sort of their income, and they'll talk about their bills and talk about how much they have in savings. And so after sort of this, and it's a short time period, so they're sort of, big picture, sharing the analysis, and then they talk about how they'll pay for it. So Suze Orman will ask them, okay, so the item is $312. How are you going to pay for it? And then they'll say, oh, I'm going to pay for it from my savings, short-term savings. I'm going to pay for it with my next paycheck. I'm going to pay for it with my credit card. And so then Suze Orman will tell them they're approved or denied. And if they're approved, she'll say, approved, you can afford it. And then usually she'll say something really positive to them. And then she'll say, you're denied. And they'll have a little graphic if you're watching the show. A little graphic comes on the screen. I'm doing this from memory, if I remember correct. And then she'll explain why. And she'll explain, well, you're denied because you don't have enough resources in your savings account, in your short-term savings. You're denied because you don't have enough in your long-term retirement savings. You're denied because you have too much debt. You're denied for whatever reason. She'll explain her reasoning and why she's giving that advice. And so it's interesting, but I do want to make clear, and the whole purpose of this show, of course, is making the argument that things that we think we can afford, we actually can't. And the whole exercise of sort of going through, it doesn't have to be on sort of a national or international television show, but going through and having either being your own sounding board and sort of working through the numbers really pragmatically, or having another entity that you can sort of bounce ideas off of to kind of work through, can I afford it, is really helpful. Because I think what we all do, and I'm putting myself certainly in this, is if I think, okay, well, something, it costs $1, it's $1. And if I think, well, I have $100, I can certainly spend this $1 because I have $100. Well, there's more to the story. There's more to the story. And one of the things I find that this segment on the Suze Orman show was really interesting was how differently people see things. There'll be people who call and they have, very little in savings, and they have a lot of debt, and they're asking for something that's really, really expensive, and they seem surprised, really kind of shocked when Suze Orman says, no, you can't afford it, and explains what her analysis would be. So there's somebody who might be totally in debt, who feels like, I can afford this. And then there'll be other people who call and will have pretty substantial resources and no debt, and will be very surprised when they're told they're approved. And they'll be, wow, really? And if it's someone and, they have $750,000 and long-term and short-term investments and savings, and they don't have any debt, and they want to buy something that's $3, then you would think that the person would realize, well, I think I can afford it. But they're just really surprised, like, wow, I can afford it. And it's interesting, again, right? The person who is totally in debt, you would think they wouldn't be asking can they afford anything until they paid that debt off. But it underscores this point about how subjective finance is, because it's fraught with all these emotional things, right? And so many of us want to, or culturally are influenced in ways that we define ourselves by stuff. And so this show is about what I've talked about in many of my seminars, educational programs, speeches on personal finance and mastering and your budget and these types of things. Whether you have a big goal, you're buying a house, or you're investing in a business, or you're an entrepreneur and you're launching a new entity, or you have smaller goals. My argument in the reality of the framework for this show is we can't afford it. This show episode 156, the title is Suze Orman Is Right. You can't afford it, and neither can I. We cannot afford it. And my argument is that's where we're starting. So we're not even making any other assumption other than we cannot afford it. You can't afford it, and neither can I. No. Now, why are we starting with that assumption? For a couple of reasons. I talked about in many of our other programs that part of our big picture goals should be to make sure that money is not an object of stress in our lives, right? That it's a tool that we could use to create opportunities for travel, opportunities for education, opportunities for hobbies, opportunities for having resources in case something breaks or something goes wrong. So it's a tool, and it shouldn't create stress. It should help alleviate stress. Part of this, though, is us understanding that everything that we give away, I referred to it in other financial fierceness shows, is everything that you give away, right? That you spend on other businesses and services and buying stuff. That it's you're stealing from yourself, because you had that money and now you gave it away. Now someone else has it. Now you don't have it anymore. And we really want to look at this part of this equation. I am stunned, and I do mean stunned at how much things cost. Now, I have freely admitted the feedback I have gotten throughout many, many years of my life has been that people perceive me as being a bit of a budget conscious person. I've been also had people, I've been in situations where people have used words that maybe weren't so kind when they're referring to my affinity for bargains. Some people have called me cheap. Some people have implied that I am unreasonably cheap. And I actually don't agree with this. I do think about personal finance, big picture, very simplified, that my goal is to keep as much as I can. The whole penny saved is a penny earned. That's literally the whole plan. Now I'm going to keep it. Some of it I'm going to keep it, and I'm going to use it to grow. So some money I'll keep. I'll put in opportunities where the money itself that I kept will now generate more money. Maybe I'll buy something that generates income. Maybe it's an investment. Maybe it's a tangible investment. It could be like a rental house, or it could be a security. So it's paper. But the point is that I want to keep it. I don't want to give it away, because every time I give it away, I'm stealing from myself at some sort of rudimentary level, and I'm labeling it with these terms for a couple of reasons. When I say I'm stunned at how much stuff costs, I am really, really stunned for all kinds of reasons. I've been very focused for several decades now on, I had very clear ideas as a young person of the type of lifestyle I wanted to live and the type of work I wanted to do. And I'm doing it. So it's everything I thought about that I wanted to do. I've either done it, or I tried it and failed, or I tried it and succeeded, or whatever. But I definitely went after every dream, right? And so a lot of the dreams I had as a young person were to be a writer, to perform at some level, to be a lawyer, to own businesses. These are all things, and I'm not exaggerating, in my diary from when I was a younger kid, when I was, still a young person. So I've had these interests forever. And I've had, like I said, I've tried and failed catastrophically at things, and I've tried and sustained myself, and I've tried and been surprised at new opportunities that have come along, and I've enjoyed it all. But again, I've been mindful, and I'm very mindful today, that everything that I give away is, basically stealing it out of my own possession and giving it to some other entity. Now, some of the things I give away, I'm not upset about. I'm not upset if I have a mortgage on a property and it was a good buy. And you make money in real estate when you buy. What that means is you have to buy at the right price. If you bought at the top of a market and something wasn't worth what you paid for it, well, you lost when you bought it. If you bought it at the right price, which is no one really knows, so much of this is gambling to a certain extent. But if you bought it at the right price, you made money when you bought it, because you'll be able to either rent it out and make cash flow, so it'll make you money, or it'll appreciate. Ideally, both. So I don't mind I'm paying on a mortgage. I don't mind if I'm spending money on education, because I just certainly, if you've looked and been part of many of our other programs, I just hammer home, you need skills. You need as many skills as you can possibly obtain, because it gives you competitive advantage, and it also makes your life less boring, because you never even know what you're capable of until you try. The majority of things, though, I'm going to sit and think, how can I minimize giving away money on this? And I'm not exaggerating. Okay, specific example. And it also was a show sponsor, but I think actually this will be really helpful. Okay, so I'm older, right? I'm not under 18, because I'm an adult. And I was, alive before internet technology that exists, and certainly I was alive before cell phones as we know them, much less smartphones. Okay, so fast forward, I was with a cell phone provider, and I was looking at my bill, and I was thinking, this is incredibly expensive, and this is just an account with just one person using that account, right? Myself. So I was talking to the provider and trying to see what I could do to lower the bill. And I have talked about this in other programs where I go and I call these my money days, right? Where I sit down and I take the bills and I plan this out on the calendar, because I know it's going to take hours and hours. And I sit through whatever phone tree I have to go through, and I just call. And what I'm doing is lowering all these bills. I'm saving money everywhere I can. None of this is required. Obviously, you don't sign up for a service or a utility, and then they tell you call back and lower your bills in a few months. But this is what I want to do, because there's always an opportunity potentially for a penny saved is a penny earned. So I'm going to go earn some money. That's why I call it a money day. So I was talking to a cell phone provider, and I was asking, I was saying, so if there's a person who has multiple people on their account, let's say a family account, or there's multiple employees, these bills are hundreds and hundreds of dollars, right? And I said, how is somebody affording a cell phone bill that's like $200? That's a car note. And my point was a couple of things. One, I'm shocked at how much things cost, partially because I'm what some people call budget minded. But the other part is, like I was saying, many of my dreams and ideas I tried in terms of professions or occupations or businesses totally failed, and it was horrible, and it was financial loss, and the whole it was all it's awful. That's what failure, it hurts. But a few things have permitted me to be able to provide customers and clients with services and to be able to support myself. And at a reasonably comparatively nice level. What do I mean by that? I always talk about in programs that data is your friend, right? So go look and research what the average income is where you are in the world. Now, I'm based in the U.S. right now, and so in the U.S., I went to the government agency that claims that they have credible data and that they collect it on things like this to answer these questions. And so the last data I had was somewhere around, and I wanted to know this: what's the average individual in this country earn a year? So I could figure out sort of, am I average? Am I way above average? Am I way below average? And then I could better figure out if I'm being, realistic with these questions about lowering my bill. So I went to the census and I looked, and I know I've I'm thinking we've linked to this in other shows, but it's somewhere around, it's in the $20,000 range. I want to say it's somewhere around, $23,000 or $24,000 a year, sort of, average income per adult in the U.S. Okay. So I have been very fortunate, and I have earned much less than $24,000 a year, and I've earned much more than $24,000 a year. I don't understand how people can afford hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on some of these costs on less money than I make. So I was trying to ask the cell phone provider, what better deals can you give me? And basically they, gave me some offer, but I still thought it was still too high. It was too high. So I'm always looking to see what I don't know, because of course almost everything that exists or could exist, I don't know. Another show we talked about that, how powerful it is to say I don't know. So anyway, I was just browsing, looking around to see is there anything that's cheaper that I could find to use for a mobile phone provider, and I found relatively new little business that had a different business model. So instead of paying the business model for a lot of these companies in the U.S. is you pay a certain amount of money and you could get unlimited talking minutes, unlimited texting. They used to have unlimited data, but then as smartphones are all really new, depending on how your life experience. But I remember right when the smartphone ideas first sort of came out. It's really new. So I don't think we all understood how the technology would change and how people would use data. So you don't see really the unlimited data, but you see sort of generous plans, right? And the idea is you pay X amount of dollars, and then you don't have to worry about how many minutes you talked on the phone. You don't have to worry about how many text messages you sent. And in some instances, there used to be, although most of them I think have phased it out, you don't have to worry about how much data you use, right? But okay. But you get the smorgasbord of unlimited. Unlimited will help you if you have a lot of call volume, right? Or you have a lot of texting, or you have a lot of data. Unlimited doesn't help you if you're not using that much of the service, right? So if I went to, I'm live in Las Vegas, right? And so they have some of the most fabulous, and I do mean fabulous and decadent, buffets that you'll ever see, where all sort of, there's just more than your eyes and certainly more than your stomach could even begin to consume. And some of them have very low price points, some of them have, higher price points. But the idea is, look at all of this, right? There's tables and tables and tables and tables and tables of delicious, sumptuous food, right? And you pay a certain amount of money. That's great if you're able to eat a lot. Now, if you go to a buffet and you pay money, but you're unable to eat, maybe you don't feel well, then why did you pay for all this? Or maybe you only had one glass of water. Well, then the buffet wasn't worth much to you because you didn't consume much. You've been better off just paying for the glass of water. So we have to make decisions when we're spending money to see, how do we use this, so that we can save money based on how we use it. I don't use the mobile phone much for talking, and I don't text really. I mean, I have a few times, but I mean this. I think honestly, I send and receive 4 text messages a month on average. I mean, this is not something that I do. From what I understand, there are people who send hundreds and thousands of text messages a month. So they would have a totally different usage pattern than I would, so they want to look at their bill differently than I would. Long story short, I went and saw there was sort of a startup, which is a company that sort of uses they piggyback on the infrastructure of bigger companies that sort of have more of the equipment for mobile communication, and then they sort of resell it in different models. And so this company that is a show sponsor today is Ting, Ting. And the bottom line is this: I went from spending $150 on average for the mobile bill to spending less than $30. So I've saved on average $120 a month. That's money that I didn't have stolen away, that I could use for other things. So when the show title says Suze Orman is right, you can't afford it and neither can I, we have to start with the presumption we can't afford it. I don't care how much money you make. I really don't. We must start with the presumption that we cannot afford it. And then we're going to work backwards and somewhat analogous to what they do in the show. Just look and see what's the real financial picture. Just because you have checks in your checkbook, which, or you've got, credit available on your credit card, or there's money in the bank account, doesn't mean you can afford it. And it doesn't matter how much money you earn or bring in a year. I don't care what your salary is. I don't care what your investments pay you. We're going to start with the assumption I cannot afford it. And then we're going to work backwards. And we're going to understand that everything that we give away that is stolen from us is going to make it that much harder for us to have the relaxation, low stress relationship with our money that we're aiming for. When I say I'm shocked at how much things cost, I gave the cell phone provider, clothes, people spend, again, the money is supposed to be a tool for opportunity. So I do understand if you live in a part of the world where you need private transportation, where there's not great public transportation, it's either not built, it doesn't really exist, or the layout of the geography doesn't really permit that, and you need a private a vehicle or a motorized moped or something. That will allow you to get a better job. It'll allow you to be able to make more money by being able to travel to different places and be have more control of your schedule. Then that needs to be a priority, because that money for that transportation that you're going to utilize is going to permit you to make more money, right? So why would you go take the money that you could have spent on your private transportation and ensuring you could afford something that's safe and that's going to work? Private transportation only is awesome and helpful to make you potentially have more opportunity if it works. If you go out and you get private transportation and it's so mechanically unsound, and or old that it doesn't work, then it's not worth anything. If it breaks down all the time, right? I need it to run, and I need it to run reliably, so I can plan. It's going to take me this amount of time to get to work. If you have to take family members to daycare or elder care or whatever it is you're doing, you need to be able to rely on it. So going and getting something that's not reliable could potentially thwart your entire plan, because your employer, when I worked a lot of jobs in the past, didn't really care. They didn't want to hear that my car broke down. All they know is I didn't show up when I was supposed to. And if you're working an hourly job, that's a huge, big deal. In many parts of the world, in many jobs, they can let you go for that. You didn't show up when you were supposed to. So my point is this: the money that people spend on things that, to me, they could cut back on, they could then reallocate that money. $120 on this bill or that bill. Why would somebody spend hundreds of dollars on a pair of shoes when they could take that money and use that for something that could be more effective? Now, some people have so many resources that when they look at can I afford it, and they look at all their obligations, and they look at all of their income, and they look at their savings, and they look at all their choices, they do realize, oh, okay. And that's what I was saying about the sort of the show that's in the title, right? This idea that the Suze Orman segment, can you afford it? The people who are really prudent with their money are loath to let it go. They just hate spending it. And they often are shocked because, like I said, data is our friend. We don't know if there's somebody and they have $75,000 in $75,000 US in credit card debt. They may not realize that's a lot of credit card debt. They may think everybody has that much credit card debt. And that's why I said data is your friend. You should go check and find out, what does the average person in the country have in terms of debt? What does the average person earn? So that you can sort of see where you are. If you're someone who is extraordinarily off, at the end of the spectrum in terms of having incredible financial resources, it may be something where it might seem pragmatic in terms of the percentage of your resources that you're spending to spend something that's very, very, very expensive on shoes or jewelry or something. Who knows? It's the percentage. We talk about this in other programs, right? It's not how much something costs, it's a percentage of the total that you have. So if we've said, okay, we're going to spend 1% of what we have on just silly stuff, just whatever, just goofy stuff, it's not for any type of tool for our, bettering our lives. We're just going to spend it on just some sort of silly thing. And it could be, I don't know, candy, or it could be, fancy shoes or whatever. If we have the 1% and we're spending it and that's what we've agreed to, then your 1% is going to be different depending on how much money you make. 1% at $23,000 a year is going to be different than 1% at $250,000 a year. It will be different than 1% at $20 million a year. It's going to be a different number. So you can afford different stuff. The challenge is when people, I think, see something maybe advertised or in the media, or someone maybe who is in the public eye having something, and they'll think, well, I want that thing too. I want that $3,000 shirt. Okay, nothing wrong with having a $3,000 shirt. Again, as long as it's the percentage that's reasonable of what your total is, and you're very sound fundamentally in these other areas in terms of not having, your debt, and in terms of your savings, and in terms of your credit. We did a multi-part show on credit. I strongly ask you to access if you haven't. Then fine, spend it. You have it. The challenge is people can't, apparently, and that's what I thought the show segment on the Suze Orman show saw. People don't have perspective, so people can't really tell if they can afford it. And I'm arguing the best way to get the perspective is get some data and see what the averages are. Now, some of this is just basic. Obviously, if you're in debt, you're broke, right? If you owe money to other people, whether it's a credit card company or you have a loan from a family member, then you're not going to go out and buy anything because you owe somebody else money. You need to pay that off and then go buy something. What it tends to be, and the thing that's so interesting about all of it's interesting, but the part that's really interesting, it's just math, right? Money is just math, and math is beautiful because it's defined in so many instances, right? I'm not talking about sort of experimental or research or theoretical. I'm talking about sort of applied day-to-day math that most of us use. 1 and 1 is 2, so it's not mysterious or anything. It's easy at that level. The challenge is, though, if I think I need, which you don't ever need, but I think I need like a $3,000 shirt, or I feel like other people have $3,000 shirts, why don't I? Then I'll go out and I'll go into debt to get a $3,000 shirt. People will buy things on time. Now, I mentioned earlier, I think buying real property on time, you borrow money, and you have a mortgage. Ideally, if you have cash, in many instances you pay cash. Sometimes you may have the cash, but you might want to have that cash working for you in other investments or doing other things, and so you still might use a mortgage. And it does also help often with your credit score to have a variety of different types of financial instruments and behavior. But the point simply is this. Most things you don't need to rent. You don't need to rent, tires for your car. Now, if you don't have any resources at all and you're desperately in need, and if you don't get any tires, you can't get to work, I understand why you would do that temporarily. But you want to get to a point where you're not doing that so you can actually own the tires. My point of this is I cannot afford the overwhelming majority of things because I don't have the money. And even something where I might think, well, I could pay $180 for my internet service and my television. Maybe I want to have one of those recorders that records multiple shows at once and it's in different rooms, and I can afford it, right? I would argue that the purpose of this show is no, we can't. No, you can't afford it, and neither can I. So I use the mobile phone, the Ting, the T-I-N-G is the one that I'm currently using. I mean, I was using, and I haven't noticed anything or had anyone say anything about the, the call quality or the connections. It functions the exact same thing as I was before when I was paying the $150. Now I'm paying the $30. So all I'm doing is taking my $120 and using that to continue to give myself opportunities. But it's the same thing with all this other stuff. How much do you really need? I mean, we need hydration. I would argue that, and of course we need sustenance. You need to eat something or drink something or you'll die. I would also argue that we need some sort of reasonable shelter. It depends where you are in the world, things of that nature. People have different lifestyles, but somewhere, some kind of shelter and access to clean water for hygiene and also for bathing and drinking and waste. Now, can you live without those things? Yeah, people do. Millions and millions of people do. But if you have the ability to try to get to, again, clean water is huge. Uh, Restroom facilities, very, very helpful for health and certainly cutting back on carrying diseases and things of that nature. Those are really good goals. Once we get those kind of goals met, a lot of people, the people that I'm talking about who are calling the Suze Orman Show to ask can they buy a watch or $3,000 shirt or whatever, they're not people who don't have access to clean water. So this is a difficult question depending on where you are, but in many parts of the world, people are it's just it's so psychological. So a couple of things are in the show notes, and again, I encourage you. It's episode 156. Come to the website page. There's a whole page dedicated to show 156, which is financial fierceness. Suze Orman is right. You cannot afford it. Neither can I. A couple of keynotes. One, I deny myself items all the time for a couple of reasons. There's so much research that shows that the anticipation and excitement about things is before. So like research shows that, planning a vacation and looking forward to vacation, you're much more excited and happy in that period than you are after you actually go on. Depending on how the vacation went, it may be a lot worse when you actually go and you may think this is nothing like I planned and dreamed about. But it's the dreaming and the planning and the anticipation, which is the exciting part of life. And what we find, not just in the research, but also just anecdotally, that what a letdown we get, right? So you were so excited about the thing and then the thing happened. And now what? There's like that sort of, sometimes even a sadness, like, oh, now what? Because you were looking forward to it, right? You were excited and looking forward to the thing. You want to do as much as you can. This is certainly one of the solutions I'm advocating, to artificially create that for yourself. It's much more exciting to dream about something and think about something and plan for something and save for something and then sort of draw that out as long as you can than it is to just go and get everything right now. This is a challenge we talk about sometimes in our satisfaction saturation series, which is sort of the other side of the process. When we talk about surpassing your goals, what happens after you keep doing that? Then what? What do you do when you have all the stuff that you thought you wanted? Do you just sit around somewhere sad and lonely? Do you, become someone who is disengaged in society? I mean, what do you do? And one of the ways artificially to sort of pump up your excitement, anticipation in life is to create things that you anticipate. So even though you may run your numbers and your budget and, okay, all right, my dad, all right, look at all of my resources and my savings and my liquid assets. Liquid, I mean, it's what it sounds like. Liquid, you can actually reach out and sort of grab it. You don't have to sell something to be able to obtain it. So you look and you think, okay, even if you have many, many resources, you still, I'm strongly suggesting, because we're always talking about practicing the joyful art, right? The joyful art of business. This idea that you want to create opportunities to feel joyous. It's not joyful if you have a lot of resources and you just go out and you get everything. Because you're constantly having that deflation. Now what? And people get into this, and I've talked about it in other shows. I've gotten into it. Where I had more vehicles, automobiles, than I could drive. Because I don't even drive that much. And I literally got to a point where vehicles, because I wasn't using them, then every time I would try to use it, I'd have to call, a mechanic, because they're like, well, you're not driving it enough. And I literally was told you need to go out and just force yourself to drive these other cars, just at least, I can't remember how, every couple of weeks or whatever. Otherwise, you're going to keep having this problem. And then you can buy this machinery that you can plug in. So it was called a trickle charger, and the idea was that you're not even driving this stuff; it just sits there. So you need to plug this in and sort of keep the generation of the battery. Otherwise, you're going to keep running through having to keep buying new batteries. When you have too many cars and you can actually even get around your driving because your travel schedule and how you drive, that's a problem. And I've known people who have many more economic resources than I do who do that on an even extreme version. Can you drive 15 cars? You don't even, sometimes people have so much stuff they don't even remember they have that stuff. They go and they're like, oh, I forgot I even had this. Look at this. It's nice. Now that I look at it, I can't even remember it. And people do it with all kind of stuff. With cars, people do it with clothes, people do it with anything. You name something, they'll collect it, right? And they have so much stuff. It's like, what is all of this stuff? I don't remember last time I even used this or even thought, I didn't even know I had it. You can get into that with having way too many houses. That's certainly something I've experienced. And then you go through the hassle of, well, I'll spend so much time in this house and so much time in that house. And then it's like, well, yeah, but now I have to move all this kind of stuff and the logistics of all of this. And what's the point of all of this? So I'm arguing whether you make minimum wage or, you one of the wealthiest people in the world, millions or billions of dollars of resources, we all still face the same problem. We cannot afford it. Whether we are in a situation where really the numbers are not adding up on our side. If you're borrowing money or you have money you owe other people, you cannot afford to get anything else. Now, of course I understand there's a health problem and I have to pay for this. Well, yes. As I said earlier, it's not logical mathematically to lease car tires, but if you need those car tires and that's the only thing you come up with to get the car going, to get to work, to get the money to keep it moving, then lease the car tire. And then the goal needs to be to get to the point where you buy and own your own stuff. But you're not going to go get extra stuff when you're in that situation. You don't have anything right now. Your financial situation is not stable. And even if you look at your financial situation and you realize, oh, okay, it's more stable than I thought it was, you still need to create that excitement in life by denying yourself stuff. If you just go out and buy everything, it's deflating and it gets really, you're missing that anticipation part. Now, of course, I've had in many other programs we talk about, well, you need to expand what you're doing in your life. You need to be of service in other ways. You need to use your time differently. But even while you're doing that, deny yourself stuff. There's nothing more exciting than denying yourself stuff. And you may listen to this and think, well, why would you deny yourself something when you have the money for it? The point is that you never know what the future holds. There could be natural disasters, there could be war, there could be all kind of things that will really quickly shake up and change financial situations. So never take for granted. So why not save a little extra? The other thing is it's kind of exciting. It makes there's something to anticipate. Sometimes with premium television, or I'll say, well, I can't afford that, so I don't have HBO or Showtime or whatever. And then if there's something that I'd like to see, I'll think, wow, really, that's exciting. And then I'll wait until it comes out available and I can rent it or whatever. And it's exciting. Maybe I had to wait a little bit, but the waiting makes it exciting. Don't deny yourself things you need, right, for your health, for your safety. But all the other little stuff, when you go through and look at where you spend money, I'm constantly shocked. Not just how much things cost, but how much I waste. How much I'm stealing from myself on stuff that I look and I think, really? We cannot afford it. We may not literally be able to afford it in terms of numbers. If you owe debt, you don't have the ability to buy anything else. If it's an emergency because you can't get to work or it's a health thing, then of course. But you have to change your mindset. You're not going to go out and get those things. There are people who make $20,000 a month who say, I can't afford this type of fancy thing. So it doesn't make any sense if somebody makes $20,000 a year that they think they can. None of us can. I can't. Neither can them. Neither can they. Whether you make $20,000 a year or $20,000 a month or $20,000 a day or $20,000 an hour, I don't care. We cannot afford all this stuff. There's a psychic price, there's an emotional price, and then there's the actual price. And there's nothing more exciting than that thing you waited for, an anticipation of it. Budget. If you already have the budget, say to yourself, well, I'm just going to go without that for a few months and see if I notice it. It's amazing, like I said, the car thing, right, when I had too many cars. So I get rid, I downsize. I don't even notice that I have less. because I wasn't even using the other stuff anyway, which is part of the problem. This entire program is begging you to start with the assumption that you cannot afford it. If you look at your numbers and you owe money, you cannot afford it. I've totally answered the question. You have credit card debt, you don't have any money, you have no savings, you cannot afford it. If you look at your numbers and you have multiples of savings and liquid assets and resources and you can easily afford it, ask yourself what excitement and interest it will do to give yourself some time. Going out and just getting it all right this second, it just diminishes a lot of the zest we have for life. And the other thing is, even if your resources are incredible in terms of the opportunities that you have economically, again, we never know what the future holds. And you always want to make sure that you have backup resources and that you save for a rainy day. So deny yourself that. When you get all this stuff, most of it, you start to at some point get in the point, you can't even use all this stuff. You don't even know you have this stuff. So why did you waste that? And even if it's something where you think, okay, all right, I'll deny myself. How about this? How about if you just insist and say, you know what, though, I just have to spend. Why don't you go out and that's where something that's a verified, that's some charitable giving. Because a lot of the things that you start spending money on when you have more resources would make a huge difference in somebody's life. So I'm saying that $120 a month could be a car note on a newer car. Now a low price point car, it's not going to get you a luxury mobile, but it'll get you a newer, maybe small, or close, or get you something where you could make a payment on it. And it's the same thing, buying a $3,000 shirt, okay, maybe if you already have one or a couple, $3,000 for a lot of people could change their entire lives. What difference would that make to people who are in real need? So there's a lot of things that we can do. Remember, our goal is this. Money is reducing stress. It's a tool to us surpassing our goals and continuing to have that joyful art of business. We cannot afford it. We're going to start with that, and we're going to maintain that as our base focus. I cannot afford this. We are going to look at our finances, and remember that there's two parts to this. There's the actual monetary calculation, and then the other part is the emotional, psychological part. We just can't go out and get all the stuff we see, because then you have all this stuff, and then you have this hassle. Where am I going to store it? I had to hire somebody else to take care of it. And at some point, really? Are you happier? No, you're not. There's research on this, right? The other thing is repair and maintain things. I will admit that I have gone certainly and invested in things that were some fancy thing that I'd saved for and really wanted, did my plan, deny it, and then finally, yay. What I'll do though, once I get that thing though, is I maintain it, I keep it clean, I take care of it, and then if something happens to it, my first instinct is to repair it. My absolute last, and I do mean last, option will be to replace it, because I do not want to spend more money on a new thing. So, for example, I have a purse, a handbag. Now it's at least 10 years old. It has to be, because I'm thinking about where I bought it and when I bought it, and it had to be at least 10 years old. But I love the color of it. It's kind of a different color, kind of a lighter peach color. You don't really see this color a lot. So it is fancy. I did get it at a discount, even though it's a fancy purse, over, let's say 10 years ago. And I love this color, right? So when I try to keep it clean, take care of my things, right? So then when I did see that the handles were starting to kind of fray, I immediately was like, I need to find, a cobbler, a repair place. People who go and they repair stuff like shoes and purses and suitcases and stuff. And I did. And I went to the first cobbler who tried to repair it and didn't really do a good job. But then I went to a second cobbler and and that second cobbler built brand new straps, right? Brand new, and then dyed them to match the really kind of different color scheme of the rest of the person. It looks brand new and it's beautiful. And let's say I spent $40 on the repair, but I've had 10 years of use out of that bag, and I'm sure I'm gonna have another 10 now at least, because now it's repaired and looks beautiful. They cleaned it too when they put the handles. You can do all kinds of things. I do that with shoes. If you buy something nice, so let's say you get to the point you've dealt with your finances, your credit is very strong, your debt is, maybe what they call good debt. It's all relative, but it's an investment in your education, it's investment in, real estate, whatever. And you've got good asset flow and diversification and savings. And then, okay, I bought something nice. Okay, fine. Remember? And you saved for it and planned for it. So the anticipation, the excitement. Then just hold on. Because if you get 10 years out of something or 20 years out of something that was built well, that's why a lot of the things that are expensive, a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them are expensive because the quality of craftsmanship that goes into it, it's built so well that it will last forever if you take care of it. Not forever, but it'll last a long time and continue to give you happiness. And then, of course, not having to buy a new thing, not having to spend replacement costs is going to continue to put money in your pocket, which will continue to give you opportunities for either yourself and or your family and or your friends or your charities or whatever it is that you do to, enjoy and make your life joyful in some ways and to be of service to other people or to the planet in any way. But remember, the first thing you want to do immediately, deny yourself that thing. You want to make sure that you get good data. Data is your friend. We talked about data with incomes. I mentioned the census. Look and see how much. So you can get a feel for kind of where you are in terms of the sort of the big picture. Also, data is your friend when you're in the store. If you're especially like grocery stores where they have signage in a lot of places where it'll tell you, what's this item cost, but how large is that item, right? And it'll give you a unit price. If it's in small little characters, but get down and look at it. If you look on the shelves in many grocery stores and markets, it'll tell you what the unit price is. And so they've already done the calculation. So one item was so many ounces, another item was more ounces, and then the prices are different. But they'll tell you what the unit is, like how much you pay per consistent unit, so you can see what a better bargain is. Sometimes it's worth it to pay more because you're getting a better unit price and you're going to use that item longer. Right? It'll last longer. It's the same thing you're doing when you buy something and you maintain it and then you repair it. Before you get rid of those shoes, can you take them to the shoe? I use the word cobbler, but that's what they are. They're masters at doing stuff like this. If that bag is you love it, but it looks old and dirty, can they clean it and sort of refresh it? Maintain it and repair. And then the last thing you're going to want to do is replace. And then when you do get ready to replace, remember, I don't care what the money says once we're beyond the point where we actually were in debt and could not at all afford it. But once we're to the point where we have, remember, good credit, and then we have our money that we can sort of lay our hands on, our savings, our emergency fund, diversification of our income. Now I can afford it mathematically. Psychologically, though, don't go out and get out all, because then you sit around, you're one of those people, oh, now I'm bored. Well, yeah. Look at all this stuff. That stuff's cluttering your life. And then you have to go spend more money to find a place to put all that stuff because you have so much stuff, and then you can't even remember the last time you went to that house, or you didn't even remember exactly you had that thing, and wow. See, it's too much. Make your life simpler and make your life more fun and exciting by saving. It may be just saving the time and sort of looking forward to something. And while you're waiting to see if you're going to, when to buy it, you could maybe find a better way to customize it or make it more interesting. Just don't rush out and do it just because you're sitting there like, oh, I can afford it. No. That's what leads to that sort of psychological negativity where you're just like, what do I do now? I went out and got all this stuff. Make your life simple and make the money work for you as a tool. Maybe to help others, to enjoy a hobby, whatever. We have to think about these things and have a plan. And again, this show was all about, here's the plan. I do want to clarify the show sponsor was Ting. It was the mobile phone service. So I don't know all the details, but I know in the States, in the U.S., I think they only work with certain phones, whatever. But there's a link on the show page, on page 156. If they work with what you have or you're interested in it, and you have a usage of your mobile phone or cellular where it makes sense to you, then I do strongly recommend it. Now, for me, like I said, it saved me $120 a month on average, and it makes me happy. Now I can pay myself that extra $120 instead of having it, I'm stealing it from myself. I don't use the services enough. If you use the services and you look at their pricing and modeling and think, well, that'd be horrible for me. My bill will be higher. I'm on a much better plan with sort of all I can eat buffet, then that's the right thing for you. The key is we have to change our mindset. Immediately, the first thing we need to think is, I cannot afford that. Suze Orman is right. You can't afford it, and neither can I. That's the first thing we have to think. I can't afford that. And then we're going to work backwards from there. And then, we want to be in a safe place where we're not denying ourselves. I know people, I must mention this as we close, I know people who actually, their finances are incredibly strong. Their credit is spectacular. They don't owe a bit of debt, but they are so emotionally in a negative place where they deny themselves even things that don't make any sense. Right? Oh, I'll just go without, a refrigerator. I'll just try to get by on food that doesn't need to be refrigerated. They have more than enough resources, but it's a psychological situation where they start to say to themselves, I don't deserve anything. And that's, again, a very unhealthy and unrealistic, and not, we remember, we want to plan for it, so the anticipation, the excitement, but then you want to, you want to treat yourself as you're able to do so financially. And if you have the resources, but you're caught in that place where you just won't spend anything ever, even on things to allow you to be able to eat, or live, then you're not being realistic. And that's another problem or opportunity for you to address some of these underlying emotional issues. Yes, you do deserve refrigeration. Okay? All right. Thank you for being here. I really enjoyed it. Of course, I beg you to share whatever useful information you found from any of our programs or resources on your social media. I also ask you to share ratings or reviews, access the program on iTunes. Please support our show sponsors. And thank you for being here for episode 156 and allowing this program to continue and to be really more successful than I even anticipated. Thank you so much.